Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab webinar. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Constance Gewa. I'm a Scientific Program Director at the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. I will start this by inviting my fellow presenters to introduce themselves. I will call out each presenter's first name. You will then introduce yourself by providing your name, your institution, position. So I will call out Andrew.
Hi, everybody. This is Andrew Stevens. Thanks for joining. I'm with USDA, and we look forward to the presentations today.
Thank you, Andrew. Max?
Max Toplitzky, I'm a Chief Scientist at the Foundation for Fresh Produce. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Bonnie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Estes. I'm the Vice President of Innovation at the Foundation for Fresh Produce. Happy to be here.
Thank you. James?
Hello, my name is James Sternberg. I'm an assistant professor in sustainable packaging at Clemson University.
Thank you, James. Anna?
Hi, everyone. I'm at USDA in the Foreign Agricultural Services, and I'm a Science and Technology Policy Fellow.
Thank you. And we are also joined by other FFAR colleagues, some of whom are going to be presenters and others who will help manage and facilitate this webinar. So Rebecca?
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Joe. I am a Senior Scientific Program Officer at FFAR. Happy to be here.
Tatiana?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tatiana. I'm a Scientific Program Associate at FFAR, and I'm happy to help conduct this webinar.
And Sam?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Bader. I'm a Communications Officer at FFAR, and looking forward to this webinar.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So this is the agenda that we have for you today. The first two items, which is the welcome remarks and introductions, have been completed. Agenda 3 and 4 is really short introductions to USDA and FFAR, the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. This will be followed by a detailed presentation on the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab application, with multiple presenters leading different sections of the presentation. We will then have a Q&A session, followed by closing remarks. Next slide, please. Some quick housekeeping. Please use the Q&A feature found at the bottom panel of your Zoom screen to post any questions during the webinar. And we provided an illustration, a diagrammatic presentation of where to find it. We will attempt to answer all questions posted during the Q&A session. Responses to unanswered questions will be included in a webinar follow-up message. You may also use the chat feature found on the bottom of your Zoom panel for comments or other communication while attending the webinar. I will now welcome Anna to introduce USDA. Anna.
Perfect. All right, so hello again. I'm Anna Walsh, and I'm working to help with the USDA side of the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab, alongside Andrew Stevens, who is also on the call and is the mastermind behind the original idea. So I'm just going to give a bit more context about what we as USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service are doing in the sustainable packaging world and why we're interested in this. Next slide, please. So to start, I have an overview of the other major packaging related work we've been doing at FAS. So we've been involved in the UN plastic treaty negotiations, with Andrew traveling to Korea for the most recent session a few weeks ago. We also engage with the World Trade Organization on issues related to packaging, mainly by monitoring, notifying, and commenting on foreign regulations that may pose technical barriers to trade. FAS the Foreign Agricultural Service, I should say, also puts out what are called GAIN reports, which provide timely information on important topics such as the EU's recent packaging and packaging waste regulation, PPWR. Packaging sustainability measures are also a new subsection of what are called FFARS reports, and these are country-specific overviews of regulations. So both GAIN and FFARS reports can serve as a good resource in understanding the landscape of packaging-related regulations. And then finally, we have several FAS-funded partnerships aiming to reduce the barriers surrounding sustainable packaging, including a US-EU dialogue on circularity a couple years back, and work with IFPA to develop new materials to meet emerging regulations. Next slide, please. So the Assisting Specialty Crop Exports Initiative, under which this program falls, is an innovative partnership between USDA and the specialty crop sector to break down non-tariff trade barriers that hinder US exports. The specific goals are to help exporters better understand foreign systems and requirements, to help other countries adopt trade facilitating standards, to help US industry understand and meet export requirements, and to support efforts to meet other countries' sustainable packaging requirements. Next slide, please. And we started the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab after close consultation with industry brought to our attention the difficulties many exporters are facing in complying with foreign regulations related to packaging. So a 2022 report commissioned by USDA revealed large gaps in exporters' awareness of and readiness for sustainable packaging requirements in export markets. And then separately, FAS consulted with a diverse group of specialty crop industry leaders, specifically, I should say, and found that emerging sustainable plastics and packaging regulations were one of the top non-tariff trade barriers that these specialty crop exporters are currently facing. Next slide, please. So to help overcome these barriers, we started the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab, or SPIL. I guess people are calling it by different things, but anyway, the goals of this initiative are to help facilitate U.S. specialty crop exports by enabling exporters to comply with emerging regulatory requirements for packaging and labeling. And specifically, we're looking to support the development of single-use packaging alternatives, reusable packaging, and packaging-free systems that can help reduce food loss at a commercial scale. Next slide, please. And just to avoid any confusion, I do want to quickly define what a specialty crop is. So this term is defined by USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service, and you can find the full list online or reach out if you have questions about what's included. But we're encouraging applications that focus on crops most impacted by regulations, such as packaging phase-outs for fresh fruits and vegetables by the EU. Next slide, please. And then finally, I just want to touch on some of the foreign regulations that the SPIL aims to address. So the countries listed aren't meant to be exhaustive, but just give examples of important trade partners who have or are planning to enact relevant regulations. These regulations include bans or restrictions on single-use packaging for fresh fruit and vegetables, extended producer responsibility, plastic taxes, and recyclability labels. And it's important to note how dynamic this landscape is right now. So we've seen significant changes in the past few years, and we expect many more in the coming years. Next slide, please. So with that, I'll leave you with some links for more information, as well as our contact information. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Anna. I'll now do a quick introduction to FFAR, and then proceed to provide an overview of the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab application. So the Foundation for the Food and Agriculture Research is an independent 501c3 organization created in the 2014 Farm Bill to increase public agriculture research investments, connecting funders, researchers, and farmers to pioneer the next frontier of agriculture innovation. Next slide. It is our mission to build unique and collaborative public-private partnerships that support scientific research to address today's biggest food and agriculture challenges. And the collaboration that you're seeing amongst the multiple partners at the table today is a testament to that, the kinds of partnerships that we build and work with through our different research programs. Next slide. FFAR's research complements USDA's research agenda. It fills critical knowledge gaps. It increases public agriculture research investments, focuses on actionable science, involves farmers to solve current challenges, and moves research from the lab and into the field. I will now turn my attention now to the Sustainable Packaging Lab Innovation Lab application overview. So next slide, please, Tatiana. So Clemson University and the Foundation for Fresh Produce of the International Fresh Produce Association, in partnership with FFAR, was selected by the USDA Foreign Agriculture Services to implement the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab. The purpose of the lab is to develop packaging and packaging alternatives for specialty crops compliant with the emergent packaging regulations in the EU, UK, Canada, Japan, and other key markets. The lab focuses on 3 tracks: applied research and development, technology accelerator, and scale-up and pilot. Clemson University will carry out post-award management of the projects selected to participate in track 1 and track 3, that is the applied R&D and the scale-up and pilot, while FFP will manage projects selected for track 2, the technology accelerator. Next slide, please. Successful applicants to this program will be recruited into one of the 3 tracks. Track 1 aims to bring nascent packaging format to the pilot stage to demonstrate commercial readiness. It seeks proposals aimed at bringing a solution that is still at the laboratory stage, but shows high promise to be implemented in pilot scale manufacturing with minimal further effort. Track 2 focuses on commercialization of novel packaging or packaging alternatives that are either in late stages of trials or market ready, or are already generating revenue through partnerships with end users, industry mentorship, and pilots. This track seeks proposals aimed at scaling innovations in sustainable packaging for the fresh produce industry. And track 3 aims to establish commercial feasibility or manufacturability of innovative packaging or packaging alternative solutions. This track seeks proposals to run pilot scale manufacturing projects aimed at commercialization or commercializing a packaging solution for specialty crop exports. Detailed presentations on these 3 tracks will be provided by Vani and James in today's webinar. Next slide, please. Through the 3 tracks of this program, we seek to identify and support companies of all sizes and researchers to develop, scale up, and commercialize solutions that address emergent packaging regulations, either pending approval or already in effect. And Anna did share a link or some information on the regulations that we know are either pending approval or already in effect. We also seek novel sustainable packaging or packaging alternatives that can replace single-use packaging and single-use plastic packaging, but can offer at least some of the same functions in an economical manner. Examples of these include, but are not limited to, an extension of shelf life, delayed or management of ripening, reduction of physical damage, food loss and food waste, and prevention of cross-contamination and absorption of moisture. Please refer to the RFA for additional examples that we've provided. Next slide, please. Here are some key considerations in what we are seeking. Proposals that focus on the development of novel materials must clearly indicate the source of the material, its uniformity, and its availability at the scale needed to provide packaging or packaging alternatives for a meaningful segment of specialty crops exported by U.S. producers. Proposals that focus on compostable packaging must indicate compliance with common home and industrially compostable standards or plans to determine compostability of the packaging construct. Proposals describing biodegradable packaging other than home and industrially compostable must clearly explain the end of life of the packaging. And proposals that focus on reusable packaging must take into consideration the regulations that require reusable packaging to be collected and returned to the origin and then reused for the same intended purpose. Next slide, please. Proposed research must address at least two of these questions. How does activity advance the goals of maintaining or increasing U.S. exports of specialty crops? How does the activity enable U.S. exporters to comply with emergent regulatory requirements for packaging and labeling? And again, please look at the footnote we provided in the RFA for the regulatory requirements. I'll link to that. How does the activity support the development of packaging materials that are alternatives to single-use plastic packaging? How does the activity support the development of reusable packaging systems for the export of specialty crops? How does the activity support the export of specialty crops that will be sold at retail without packaging? How does the activity reduce food loss and waste of exported fresh produce? And how does the activity promote the implementation of novel sustainable packaging at a commercial scale for exports of specialty crops? Next slide, please. What we provided in this list is really a list of examples of activities that will not be supported by the program. The development or improvement of infrastructure for composting or recycling or refill or reuse, projects that are broadly considered as social science research, fundamental research on materials that have no clear viable pathway to pilot scale production or cannot be demonstrated in the project time span, packaging for foods or commodities other than specialty crops, and packaging formats that need to be separated to be recyclable or compostable, and shopping bags and alternatives. Please see a full list of ineligible activities in the RFA. What we provided is just a sample of that, of those activities. Next slide, please. The program will support a maximum of 20 awards. The funding per project will range between $50,000 US and $250,000 US, with a project duration of 12 months. And as you're working on your budget, the indirect cost is set as 10% of the total cost of the project. This will be a reimbursable award, not prepaid, with quarterly invoicing and reporting required. Next slide, please. The program welcomes applications from domestic or international companies of all scales, institutions of higher education, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, government-affiliated researchers. Applications from international entities are invited as long as there's a clearly described collaboration with US-based researchers, packaging companies, or exporters of specialty crops. Any individual with skills, knowledge, and resources necessary to carry out the proposed research as a program director or principal investigator is invited to work with their organization to develop an application for support. Please note that all applicants must have a unique entity identifier, UEI number, which could be obtained via registration in the US Government System for Award Management, www.sam.gov, before receiving any funds. Applicants with inactive, expired, pending, or excluded listings will be deemed ineligible. Exceptions, waivers, or extensions will not be considered. I will now invite Vani to provide details on track 2.
Hello. I'll go through the details on track 2, which is the technology accelerator. And I'm in case you missed the introduction, Bonnie Estes is the Vice President of Innovation at the International Fresh Produce Association. Next slide. The Foundation for Fresh Produce is the 501(c) company that is part of IFPA, and they will be managing the program. And the mission of the foundation is for growing a healthier world by changing the trajectory of human health. And we do this by boosting appeal, improving access, nurturing passionate professionals, and scaling partner impact. You can go to the foundation's website to learn more about the great work that we do. Next slide. So the Tech Accelerator is an extension of a program that has been ongoing for 3 years. So it's an established program with people in place to manage it and run it, and it is run very smoothly. In the past 3 years, we've been focusing on climate smart agriculture, and we've had 12 companies per year that have applied and been part of the program that bring all different kinds of new technologies into the industry, the produce industry, to solve some of our biggest problems around climate change. And some of the success examples of these, and there have been many, but a few are increased non-dilutive funding from NIFA and NASA SBR and SBIR. And we've had companies that have had multiple trials at scale. So they found partners to work with within the produce industry where they can scale and trial their products in late stage testing. We've had a number of companies that have raised funding from VCs. And we've had a couple companies that were acquired through the program. So the program is very established and successful and really gives a lot of benefits to those involved. Next slide. So we've talked a lot about what we're looking for, but just to kind of highlight a little bit for track 2 is that we're looking for, it could be startup companies, it could be established companies, or it could be other inventors with innovative package solutions, replacing single-use packaging, reducing food loss and waste. And one of the things for this track specifically is that things need to be market ready. It needs to be out of the research phase and ready to trial or sell. Next slide. So the types of companies, again, that we're looking for are companies with proven technology that's produced and supplied at scale. So this may be companies that have products in other markets besides produce, either other agriculture, food and beverage markets, or they could be in the car business. But we're looking for companies that have technologies that are proven and could be already in the market. We could also be talking to product-ready companies with late-stage testing. So they've been testing it at scale, and they're ready to go commercial. Companies with entry-level sales, so they might have sales in another country, they might have sales in another type of industry, but they're ready to get the product into the market at scale here in the US to solve the problems with export. And it could be companies that need an on-ramp into the produce industry. We find that sometimes the specialty produce industry is a little opaque and hard to commercialize a product. And we really work with companies to meet the top leaders in the industry, to understand the industry, and to be able to commercialize their product. Next slide. So many, many benefits in this program. What's exciting for us this year is in the past 3 years, we have not been able to offer any kind of funding, which has been an issue for some of the companies we've worked for. They needed just a little more money to kind of get over a hump. So we're really excited to be part of this program where we can offer $50,000 to $250,000 for the program. So that's a huge selling point, and really appreciate being part of the program to be able to do this. We'll get, companies will get industry expertise and getting to know C-suite executives in the largest produce companies. we'll be able to position innovation for compliance. So as Anna was saying earlier, there's so much change that's going on around regulations around the world. And so we'll be able to help people keep up to date at what's going on in different countries. Through IFPA's market research and analytics and insights group, we have a lot of data that help people understand the industry and understand to do business planning, understand what consumers want and what the rest of the industry needs, and really unparalleled networking to be able to network within the industry in the produce. Next slide. So these are the highlights of the program. First is the Emergent Week in California, and this is everybody's favorite week of the program, where we travel, we meet in San Francisco, get on a bus, it's a lot of togetherness, and travel down to Los Angeles and stop at up to 15 different places along the way to see plastic and packaging companies, growers, processors, all different kinds of companies in the produce industry, and get to talk to the innovators and the producers at those different companies to understand what their needs are and how they would use a product. This year, that program is going to run from May 4th to May 9th. We have virtual meetups throughout the program where we bring in different types of experts on a Zoom call and do Q&A and really be able to tap into some of that leadership in the industry. Another great part of the program is one-on-one mentorship, where we assign a mentor to each of the companies to really work with them around market readiness and go-to-market strategies. We also have a demo day, which is going to be August 20th, and that's in Salinas, California, where we bring in the top potential customers for these companies and allow the companies to present to them and have a day of conversation and Q&A. And then also the Global Produce and Floral Show will be our group of 12 companies, plus up to 25,000 other of our closest friends in the produce industry get together in Anaheim. And it's the largest gathering of the produce industry and really allows our companies to mix with the industry and meet with different decision makers. Next slide. Here's just a quick little snapshot of some of the things that we do. We go out in the field and see harvesting get done. We go to packaging companies. We go to processing companies. We go to grocery stores. We get to see all parts of the industry. Next slide. A couple other pictures of greens processing, harvesting, and a plastics company. Next slide. So we really hope that you are able to apply to the program and go to the RFA specifically, and then also our website to see examples of the program and look at if you're eligible or ineligible. And I would really suggest that you apply unless you are squarely in the ineligible. We'd love to see all applications and really bring these new technologies in. Next slide. We look forward to seeing your application. Thank you.
Okay, hello. Welcome everybody once again. My name is James Sternberg here at Clemson University in the Department of Food, Nutrition, and Packaging Sciences. And what I'd like to do is just describe the type of research and activities that are welcomed in track 1 and 3 of this initiative. Next slide, please. So some of this information has already been presented, but I'd like to just kind of represent it and reiterate it in the context of track 1 and track 3. So many of you are obviously familiar with research, whether you're at an academic institution or part of an organization or company. And research can really span many different levels. And so what I really want to sort of emphasize is the type of research and the applicability of that research to this initiative. First, and specifically in light a lot of the emails and questions that I have received surrounding this RFA, what I'd like to highlight really is these first two questions. If you have a product or if you have an idea, the first two questions here really point out the type of research that is desired here for track 1 and track 3. How does the research activity advance the Assisting Specialty Crop Exports Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab objectives and the FFAR goal of maintaining or increasing U.S. exports of specialty crops? So that's how applied the research goals should be in your proposal, not necessarily just doing material research or solving one problem, but how is it going to assist specialty crop exports? And then the next one here, how does the research activity enable U.S. exporters to comply with emerging regulatory requirements? So even if you have a really great application or really great solution, it still has to address these emerging regulatory requirements in Canada, Europe, Japan, et cetera, as has already been mentioned. Next slide. So here are the example kinds of solutions, and this isn't inclusive. It can be outside of this list, but these types of packaging, right? So the idea is to create new types of packaging or coatings or labeling systems or return systems. So the focus here is on packaging solutions. That's all I'll kind of say for that. You can certainly feel free to email or contact us here at Clemson if you have a question, but it should always be a research question based on creating some new type of packaging or assisting in the export of specialty crops. Next slide, please. So track 1, applied R&D. The emphasis is not to demonstrate the properties and performance of a particular material, but rather to take an existing material that has already had this demonstration and then work towards the pilot scale. So really, it's not laboratory R&D. It's not just describing a certain system and seeing how the system can work. It's more about taking a system that already works or a product that already works and then getting to that pilot scale and ultimately demonstrating the commercial viability of that. So the goal is, that you would, apply maybe in track 1, and then in subsequent years, you can move on to track 3, which is the actual pilot scale production and the pilot studies surrounding that new solution. Next slide, please. So here's just a very simple example. Don't mean to belabor the point, but say Professor X has a compostable foam that can be used in bulk transport of a number of different specialty crops. It's shown really good properties. It's shown really good performance. The next step then, as far as this initiative and this RFA is concerned, is to partner with a company who can use the funding that we provide to then demonstrate or get to the stage of actually producing this on a pilot scale and then hopefully at a commercial scale. So Professor X plans to work on any necessary laboratory trials that will support the pilot scale production. So that can certainly be happening, but the bulk of the work is to get to the pilot stage, obviously. And then, of course, what will be included in the most favorable proposals or the most highly rated proposals will be those with a viable path to commercialization. Next slide, please. Track 3 is a little bit more simple, especially if you work in R&D. Track 1 can be a little bit maybe confusing as to what kind of research is allowed or desired. But here it's relatively simple that we're looking at scale up and pilot projects basically aimed at packaging for specialty crops. And this would most likely be done in some kind of a manufacturing facility or possibly at a toll processor if that's possible. But here we're looking at actual projects, demonstrating the manufacturability of a packaging design that can assist specialty crop exports in light of emerging regulations. Next slide, please. So, very simple example, Company Z has modified their PET packaging to incorporate more recycled content but requires pilot studies to demonstrate it can be manufactured with the same quality of the incumbent material. So they plan to run manufacturing trials alongside a property comparison, cost analysis to demonstrate the viability of the new product. Trials will accompany a plan to commercialize the product in the near future. So I believe that is my last slide. If you want to run to the next slide, I think that's the end for me. But if there are any questions, feel free to reach out. But hopefully that gave you some information on what types of research is desired under track 1 and track 3. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Jewu, and I will be talking about the application components. So this part of the presentation would explain our expectation and what you need to submit to make your application more competitive. So this is really at a high level, so please review the RFA for more details. All right, next slide, please. So you will submit a full proposal, and in the first part of that, you will have the project information where you will list the project title, the project duration. Please note that projects are expected to start no later than April 15th, 2025, with a first clear deliverable due by September 30th, 2025. Also indicates your specialty crop of focus, suitability of technology for value-added product. We have gone through 3 tracks, so you will indicate which track you would like to submit to, your geographical location, total budget, and total matching funds, which is optional and not required. So next is the executive summary. This should include your area or areas of research interest, problem statement, project rationale, objectives, anticipated deliverables, and commercial viability and path to scale up. Next slide, please. So still under the full proposal component, so we need a project description. We should have a short introduction. Project objectives indicates existing partnership in the specialty crop industry, your methodology, anticipated deliverables and outcomes, KPIs, which is the key performance indicators, discussion on costs and benefits, and intellectual property management plan. The last session is on additional and optional requirements, which are not included in the 7-page limit. So you are required to provide a reference list for any literature cited. You also need a budget justification, qualification, and commitment of key personnel, and this should not be more than 5 pages. And if applicable, include organizational assurance, budget form for match funds, which is optional. If you do include a match fund, you need to add a budget form. And you are required to include quarterly Gantt charts of project goals, objectives, and timelines. Now, graphics, figures, equations, and tables are optional. Next slide. Now, I will cover the application submission guideline and key dates you should note. Next slide. So you will be submitting your full proposals through FFAR's grant management system, known as Blackbird or BBGM for short. So for new users, please register and create an account. Just a quick reminder to save your work as often as possible by clicking on Save and Finish Later. And this allows you to continue from where you stopped when you log back in. Please note that only submissions received by the deadline through the BBGM system will be accepted and considered eligible for evaluation. Next slide. So here are the key dates that you should note. Applications opened last month on December 11th with a due date of February 12th. Applicants will be informed of their status on or after April 4th. And we anticipate that the earliest project start date to be April 11th. Next slide. So now I will talk a bit about the application review process and the criteria for evaluation. A quick reminder for you all to submit any questions you may have in the Q&A box. Next slide. So once submitted, proposals will first be screened for their suitability based on the executive summary. And those focusing on ineligible activities such as crops or outputs too early in the development stage, those exceeding budget or indirect cost limits, those involving materials or formats that are not sustainable or scalable, or those that result in packaging or packaging alternatives that are not economical will not be further reviewed, and applicants will be notified of the rejection. Now, selected full proposals will undergo further review using a two-stage review process: external peer review, which is going to be the primary review, and the second review step is the program executive committee review, which is a secondary review. In the primary review, applications will be evaluated by an external peer review panel of scientific experts using the proposal review criteria posted in the RFA. The top ranking proposals will then be submitted to the program executive committee for further evaluation, and then they would then review those and then select those suitable for each of the 3 tracks based on the availability of seats within each track and the need to balance portfolio of investment into diverse technologies suitable for floral, fresh cuts, and value-added fresh products. So after this, applicants will be notified of their status. Next slide. So applications submitted to all 3 tracks will be reviewed together. However, applications will be scored differently depending on track. So track 1 proposals will be evaluated based on the feasibility of entering the pilot phase of development. Track 2 and 3 will be on the commercialization potential of the sustainable packaging or packaging alternative and the likelihood of its adoption by the industry. Next slide. So here are the general review criteria. Full proposals are evaluated based on scored primary review criteria and unscored secondary review criteria. The bullets under each criterion may serve as a guideline to applicants when writing their proposal and as a guideline to also reviewers on what to consider when judging proposals. The bullets are illustrative and not intended to be comprehensive. Reviewers will evaluate and score each criterion, and the overall assessment will not be an average score of the individual criteria. Rather, it will reflect the reviewer's overall impression of the application. So here are the review criteria. 1, relevance to exports of specialty crops, novelty or innovation, project strategy and feasibility to achieve project goals, technical or scientific merit, commercialization potential, compliance or feasibility of compliance with emergent packaging regulation with the EU, Canada, UK, and or Japan. Source materials, availability for, oops, sorry. All right, sorry about that. My screen just switched. All right, so source materials availability for novel types of packaging and packaging formats or packaging alternatives. Likely cost of the final packaging or packaging alternatives versus benefits it provides. Organizational capacity and research environment or research environment. Qualifications of the research team. And budget justification, including reasonableness of expenses. Next slide, please. All right, now I will talk about the award administration. So selection notice, next slide. If you are selected for funding or not, you will receive an email notifying you of the status of your application. You will also receive a summary of the peer review comments. Award notice. Award notice does not obligate funding until a grant agreement is fully executed. Contracts with selected applicants will be negotiated and completed either by Clemson University or by the Foundation for Fresh Produce of the International Fresh Produce Association. They will follow the organizational procedures and compliance to accomplish the overall objectives of the program. Grants period. Now, grantees may only use funds on project expenditure on or after April 15th. Projects are expected to end within 12 months from the start date, and the first deliverable is expected by September 30th. Now I'll talk about the post-award management, which is really more about reporting. We will expect quarterly technical and financial reports and quarterly and annual progress reports. The award is reimbursable and not prepaid, and a final progress report is expected within 90 days of the end date. Now, your final payment is conditional upon we receiving the final technical and finance reports or financial reports. All right, next slide. All right, so this is my last slide. So here are the contact information. Please submit all scientific program and grants related questions via email. For technical support, please contact the FFAR grants team. And for track 1 and track 3, you're going to contact Dr. Sternberg of Clemson University. And for track 2, you will contact Voni. All of the emails are also in the RFA, so please check that out. So I will stop here and invite our FFAR Communications Officer, Sam, to take us through the Q&A session. Over to you, Sam.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you all to your great recap on this application and this exciting opportunity. Many of the questions have already been answered in the Q&A chat, so please reference that if you've submitted a question. Otherwise, we will jump in. There's a question. Track 2 and 3 are very close. More information is appreciated. Vani or Max or James, could you maybe provide some more information on this?
I can start. It seems like we had several questions on the tracks 1, 2, and 3. If you look closely at the RFA, the tracks differ based on the market readiness of the technology. So for track 1 is basic R&D, technology has to be developed, but there is still some research that needs to be done. Track 2 is an accelerator. So you have a technology, you have a product that is ready, and track 2 helps one accelerate the product, get it to the market faster. And track 3 is you have a technology that's fully baked, ready to go. You're just missing one piece of data that will help you with compliance or meeting a specific regulatory requirement. So that's track 3, if it makes sense.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else would like to add anything? Okay. Another question following up on the tracks. Can we propose projects with aims that fall into different tracks? For example, this person is seeking regulatory authorization for their product, which may require some safety testing, which could potentially fall into track 1 or 2, and then simultaneously working on a process to scale up, which would be 3.
I think it's going to be cleaner to submit separate applications for track 3 because track 3 is really discrete. So 1 or 2 things that need to be done. And track 2 is more of an accelerated type of program. Is that how we also see, James?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Is track 2 is pretty sort of clear cut the program that you're going to be participating in, whereas track 1 and 3 is more sort of open research. And I think if some of your project bleeds into 1 and 3, I think that's okay. if, you know, the point is not to try and categorize the research to death, you know, and to fit you into tight little boxes, but just to describe the types of research activities that are desired. So if you would, you know, think of yourself as track 1 and 3, you can describe that in the proposal itself. And then, you know, if we see that and think that you're a better suit for 3 rather than 1 or 1 rather than 3, then that determination can be made during the review period.
Thank you. Another track clarification, this one's specific for track 1. Is it required to collaborate with industry?
You know, it's not required, that we don't have a requirement in the RFA for that, such that you'll be excluded if you don't have a partner. But if you don't have a partner that can demonstrate scale up or demonstrate manufacturability, then I'm not sure that it's going to be a very strong proposal, put it that way.
And to follow up with that, there's a separate question. Can you help us identify industry to collaborate?
Unfortunately, I don't think that's within our scope to do right now. You know, 1 month out from the application date, you know, our bandwidth, we couldn't, you know, help everyone to find a partner, given that there's 151 attendees here. That would be quite the task. But you know, we can suggest, or you know, if we can help in any way that we can. But I don't think that we can necessarily help you find a partner. That's kind of up to each organization to determine.
In the Tech Accelerator track 2, companies would have a mentor from an industry, but we certainly anticipate that whoever comes into track 2 is already a formed company with a deliverable product. So it's a long answer to a short question. Sam, there were a number of questions on IP that maybe we can answer.
Yes, go right ahead.
All IP will stay with the applicants.
Good. That covers, I think, a good chunk of the questions that we have in the Q&A box. There's also a great deal of questions regarding eligible costs. Are eligible costs, does a grant cover all eligible costs in full? Can capital laboratory equipment, et cetera, costs, is that available for reimbursement with this grant? And there's a couple other ones regarding reimbursement. I don't know the best way to tackle this. It seems that some are very specific. I would suggest for those that have extremely specific questions about reimbursement, reach out to the program contacts that are listed on our open opportunity page and within the RFA. Otherwise, Max or Vani, perhaps you can provide a more broad answer to help clear up some of that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to build a budget for a proposal that makes sense, because the worst thing you can do to yourself is to build a project with a budget that is not adequate. So build a budget that makes sense. Don't inflate it, but also don't try to do it on the cheap. And when we review applications, budget considerations would also be important, because we may find out that some projects are really expensive and are not fit for this program. On specific costs, reach out to us, because we can spend all day discussing specific costs today. But for international applicants, y'all need to obtain, or at least be in the process of obtaining, an EIN number, and that's a number that allows you to pay taxes in the United States. That's the only requirement of non-US based entities.
Thank you. And to follow up with the EIN number, we have a question. It says, if we are not a US based, but we have a US partner, can we apply without an EIN? Or would that US company have to be the one to apply to the funding?
Well, whoever is the applicant needs to have an EIN number, because the money cannot go to an entity that's unknown to the US government.
There's a few questions about asking for an available resource list of packaging used in specialty crops. Can you provide more context around that?
So great question. Packaging that's currently used for specialty crops, we're looking for alternatives to both the consumer-facing packaging, the so-called primary packaging, and that's what you see in a grocery store. That's your clamshells, the overwraps, the boxes. The secondary packaging are the RPCs, or reusable containers, that sometimes unpackaged produce or consumer-facing products go into. Many of the items either made out of single-use plastic or out of plastic or out of single-use packaging are being phased out depending on the market. So we're looking for alternatives, first of all, to primary packaging, either single-use plastic or single-use packaging altogether. And then if there are clever alternatives to currently existing plastic packaging used for transportation, we're also looking for those options. And just to clarify, we're not looking for just another box. We want to make sure that we see packaging as a continuum. So anything that extends the shelf life of the product, anything that helps with ripening or delaying ripening, anything that improves or makes sure that quality of the product remains strong during transportation or storage. So think of packaging beyond just the box, literally. That's what we're looking for.
Thank you. We have a question. Does this have to be for an export? And anything that's selling within the US, does that not then qualify?
I think what we want to make sure is the scale, that we communicate the scale of commercial production. There are a lot of local markets where products are sold, on a weekend by smaller growers, and packaging or alternatives to packaging are pretty specific to local markets, and that's what we are not including in this call. So what we want to encourage is the alternatives to single-use packaging that are of scale, that represents the U.S. Specialty crop industry.
Yeah, I
Thank you
think
for clarifying.
if I can just add something there, it's kind of maybe illustrative to go to some of the links that are in the RFA. I think it's on one of the first couple of pages. There's some footnotes surrounding new types of regulation and the types of packaging that's targeted, and you can kind of see what are some examples and what are some of the existing materials that have to be changed.
And this is Andrew from USDA. Let me just add, I agree with everything that James and Max have said. And we're not looking for like a very direct, it doesn't have to be a very specific link. It's really looking at the broad set of measures, and I think the EU is the most comprehensive. I mean, the EU PPWR has basically a phase out for most single-use plastic packaging for fresh fruit and vegetables sold at retail. And Canada is considering they've published a framework which would have a industry come up with plans that would reduce most single-use plastic packaging for fresh fruit and vegetables. But also the EU has recycled content, packaging minimization, design for recycling, and et cetera. So and then while say California, there might be some overlap with some of these, we're not looking for proposals that would say California is going to require this of me, and therefore this is my solution, because we're an export-oriented agency, and the funds are to support exports. We're looking for solutions that have been developed in other countries as well. We really want to learn from the best. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Are there any insights or examples on which specific specialty crops have the biggest challenges around sustainable packaging? And is that something that there should be a greater focus on?
In the RFA, we're specifically calling out for options for value-added products, specifically salads or fresh cut fruits and vegetables. Those are the ones that are the trickiest currently to accommodate without single-use plastic packaging. So specifically, that would be wonderful to find alternatives to that. There are products like berries that also much harder to transport without packaging. So I would say those are the trickiest right now, and if there are alternatives, that's wonderful.
Thank you. Is there a need for US-based production of the packaging?
No,
Maybe
sorry.
Bonnie or James? Okay.
Yeah.
We have a few questions revolved on the award cycle and the process. One is, will this competition be held every year? And the second question is around transferring from one step of the one track to the next.
I can start on this with, yeah, we anticipate, having another cycle and publishing another RFA for this. And that's where you could transition from one track to the next track. So, you'll be, proposing 1 year of funding in your proposal. Even if you have a 3-year, sort of project lifespan that you think it'll take to do this, your funding will kind of be year by year. So you will have to reapply each year for another year of funding, and that's where you can switch your track.
But if you have something good, there is no time like a month from now to send your application in.
That's right.
I have a question for track 1. What material properties should be validated to be considered eligible? I believe this is directly answered in the RFA, but I will defer to my science team and my partners. Please either verify that or provide a more detailed answer.
What material properties? I don't think we have a list of the types of properties that need to already be demonstrated. The idea is that you already have a material that you demonstrated on the laboratory scale. So you have some prior work, you have some prior research that this builds off of, and it's already shown promise. So the type of research that track 1 is not interested in is fundamental research. For instance, that's many, many years away from reaching a pilot stage. So the idea about track 1 is that here's this really promising application or promising material that could be used for specialty crops, and it just needs a little bit more work to get to the pilot stage. And so that's what track 1 is all about.
And to add to what James was saying, we purposefully did not list any polymers or any chemistry in the RFA.
That's right.
That we're focusing on functionalities. So whatever material, whatever polymer, whatever technologies or tools that can provide the functionalities that are listed in the RFP, that's what we want. And we are chemistry agnostic for all 3 tracks. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. For demonstrating that the technology is economical, what is the recommended approach?
I would, you always have to start with some kind of back of the envelope calculation that it's feasible. What you're proposing is feasible. I mean, it could go all the way up to a full techno-economic analysis if you've done that, or that could be part of your project is, coming up with that sort of cost analysis. But the idea is, to somehow rationally and convincingly present that your process is feasible. The manufacturing process would be feasible on a cost type of evaluation.
And we certainly appreciate that the first prototype will probably cost thousands of dollars, but we need to make sure that when the commercial product is built at scale, that it is not much more expensive than existing packaging. So we need to have the clarity of line of sight into the cost of the final product, not the prototype.
Yeah, and so in that light, like, some assumptions can be made about, prior manufacturing activities or prior material costs and that kind of thing. So you don't have to have all the data available. You can make some assumptions, but I think making a clear case for the viability of the product is necessary.
Another clarification on demonstration. So it seems, oops, sorry, I just lost that question in the chat. Here we go. So it seems that as long as the change is made to demonstrate an effort to comply with the legislation of other countries, it's then considered qualified. Is that accurate?
Generally speaking.
It needs to address those regulations.
Got it. Thank you. To further clarify on that, so a techno-economic analysis component is recommended.
I wouldn't go so far as say recommended. I would say it's certainly beneficial. But some kind of cost analysis. When I say techno-economic analysis, I'm thinking of a 25-page report or 20-page report on something. So it doesn't have to be that detailed, but some kind of a cost analysis where you're looking at how much will it cost to source the raw material? What's the cost of the manufacturing process? It can be somewhat qualitative, as I mentioned, based on assumptions and based on manufacturing of already commercial materials, but some kind of feasibility analysis that demonstrates its viability, its commercial viability.
Yeah.
Max, anything?
Yeah, perhaps a great example, for example, we can use silk, right? And it's a potentially bio-based material. But, thinking about how much would it be to make that silk? What would it cost to make packaging out of silk? And we don't expect a full write-up and an economic analysis of it, but a back of the envelope calculation. There are also some new materials that are coming in the market, but they're only available in, gram quantities. We need to make sure that whatever materials are selected, they're available in, tons, not just a few grams from Fisher Scientific.
Okay, we have a few questions around composting and recycling. First is, does the USDA have access to information on industrial composting facilities in the outlined markets?
So there was a family of questions on infrastructure and what do we mean when we say that the infrastructure projects are out of scope. What we're trying to avoid, two things. One is there are a number of materials that currently on the market that are potentially recyclable, but there's just no infrastructure for them to be recycled. And what we're trying to avoid is building facilities for recycling these materials that are recyclable, but not currently recyclable because of the infrastructure. So we're trying to keep these funds tight to make sure that we're developing new materials, new alternatives to packaging, and we're staying away from projects that look to collect waste or do something with the packaging waste to direct it better, differently, in an alternative way to recycling or composting facilities. Do we have a list of facilities in Canada, United Kingdom, or EU that recycle or compost? The answer is we do not, but we anticipate that the proposals that are submitted are focusing on materials and not necessarily on building the infrastructure or facilities. I don't know, James, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's not we're not looking at building infrastructure, right? Or building upon those systems. We're more focused on the type of packaging and the performance of the packaging itself. So things involving transportation or collection or washing or sorting are just outside the scope.
Thank you. And then somewhat along with this, what strategies or collaborations does the USDA consider essential for aligning innovators, recyclers, regulators to develop a cohesive and effective system?
Yeah, this is
Go
Andrew
ahead.
Stevens at USDA. I appreciate the sort of holistic approach there, and we're interested in talking with Jason, the author of that question, and anybody else on the call that wants to sort of take a broader look at what USDA is doing along with other agencies like Department of Energy, EPA, and Department of State and the UN plastics negotiation. Obviously, you need a systems approach. We're just stepping in with these funds to try to leverage the change that's occurring overseas and really focus on packaging innovation, because we see that there's a real need for that. But you're right, there are a lot of other issues, and happy to discuss them offline. And our slides have the contact information for myself and Dr. Anna Walsh, and the slides will be available when the recording is posted. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. Does the program value prefer home compostable packaging solutions over industrial compostable solutions?
So that's a great question. And we recognize that in certain countries like Canada and other northern countries, home compostable options are limited just due to the environmental conditions. It's, hard to heat up the pile. So we're looking specifically at the regulations that are passed in those jurisdictions. And from what we see, it's home and industrially compostable for PLU stickers. And we also flag the fact that in PPWR, compostable packaging right now is excluded from the regulation. We are expecting each state to come up with how they define access to compostable packaging. So that's going to be a process that will take place in the EU. But functionally, compostable packaging, besides PLU stickers, is currently not allowable.
Thank you. Next, is it recommended to contact program directors prior to application to get their confirmation of a proper fit?
No, I don't believe so. I would say no. For track 1 and 3.
Yeah, I would say no as well. In reality, we don't have time to talk to every single person that applies. So if you think that it's a good fit, please apply.
Does track 1 require a pilot scale study?
No, the objective is to get to a pilot scale study. So no, you don't have to have it already completed.
Does meeting the requirements of Canadian retailers count as well, or does it have to specifically be to legislation?
That's a good question. We are limiting this RFA based on the legislations and regulations that are passed by the regulatory or decision-making bodies. So requirements of individual suppliers are not included in the RFA.
But Max, I would add that our understanding of the framework proposal that Canada's Environment Ministry published is that the retailers will be implementing a number of those provisions. So
Right.
if you can trace it back to that, then I think it would be responsive.
Yeah, that's a good point, Andrew.
Thank you. Which of the tracks would regulatory compliance safety demonstration fall into, assuming that that technology is proven?
What kind of safety can we ask?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that was your question, if you can submit a new question clarifying what type of safety you were specifically questioning. I will move on to another one. Can we isolate any bioactive compounds and then incorporate to the byproduct-based film or coating? Does that go along with the vision of the program?
So that's a good question. Obviously, for alternatives to the existing single-use packaging to be commercially viable, they need to have functionality that is that adds value, because we anticipate that these new types of packaging will probably be a little bit more expensive. So if the new component of the packaging material extend the shelf life, or helps manipulate ripening one way or the other, or has food safety or food quality or shelf life extension properties, then it would be a welcome addition. But fundamentally, the packaging needs to be sort of sustainable. It can't be another PET packaging with I don't know, vitamin A added to it. That's not going to work. It's just a random comment, but.
Okay, thank you. Back to our previous question, which of the tracks would qualify regulatory compliance safety demonstration? And it looks like they clarified potentially animal studies. I believe it came from an anonymous question or anonymous attendee, so it may not quite line up.
Yeah,
Oh, here we go. Safety demonstration, potentially animal studies in preparation with safety data for submission to different regulatory agencies and ensuring that the manufacturing process meets safety standards like GMP.
So just the GMPs potentially could be track 3, but is teetering in the gray zone. Any regulatory compliance work would be eligible for these tracks, but it has to be regulatory compliance based on the line of sight for EU, UK, or other markets. So it can't just be animal studies that are not connected to a specific application process.
Does this program looking climateric and non-climateric fresh produce packaging solutions differently? Does it look at those differently?
Well, depends. Obviously, ripening is a great consideration for the product. Products that are ethylene sensitive need to be in packaging that is conducive to their proper ripening, or delayed or accelerated. It's very context dependent, but yes, potentially we're looking for solutions for both the climacteric and non-climacteric produce.
Thank you. Would the transfer of existing glass packaging to the needs of specialty crops also fall under track 2?
Potentially. We, however, highlight the fact that in the EU, reusable packaging has to be reused for the intended purpose and has to be returned back to the origin. So if we're thinking about glass jars for salads or pre-cut, one of the considerations would be, what would the return of the empty jars to the US look like, and is this economical? And the reuse for the intended purpose is a big deal, because these jars can't be then used for arts and crafts. They have to be recollected and returned back to the US.
Any other questions? Or I think maybe did Sam get frozen there? Max, can you see something?
Sure. There are questions on partnerships with universities and companies, and we certainly welcome collaborations and partnerships, but we want to make sure that the budgets are built to the project. That's an important consideration. Sam, are you back?
I am.
All right.
I apologize about that. I just got booted from Zoom. And I'm gonna turn it over to one of my teammates from FFAR when I log back in. We don't have access to the Q&A that was here.
Oh,
So perhaps Rebecca, can you take over there were 2 remaining questions in the open section of Q&A before.
I can look at them. So one
Oh,
is
thank you.
track 1 application required detailed commercialization plan. Um, all applications require a commercialization plan. So for all tracks, it needs to be an existing material. It can't be basic research for any of the tracks. And there's another question on single-use glass packaging with a high recycling share. We may need Patrick, you may need to look specifically at the links in the RFA to the EU and UK and Japanese regulations. I just can't remember what they say specifically about single-use glass. Something that we may need to ascertain. But I think that's it for questions. Oh, hybrids and sort of composite materials. The reason that we're very specific in saying that any materials that need to be disassembled or packaging that needs to be disassembled for compostability or recycling is because quite a bit of waste for fruits and vegetables is generated at the retail. So a significant proportion of product is shipped directly from the grocery store directly to a landfill. So if the product if the product is in the packaging that needs to be taken apart or disassembled, it does not add to the need to reduce waste. So that's why we have a specific requirement to not have packaging that is that requires disassembly. And it's a requirement for all 3 tracks.
That's part of the rationale behind the compostable PLUs is that same consideration that most produce is sent directly without any kind of sorting or processing. So to have a compostable sticker or label makes that process seamless if it's going to a composting operation.
Sam, I think that's it with questions.
Max and James, we've had questions about partnering with companies. If companies have the innovation and the universities, can you just comment on that partnership between university-based PIs and companies
We love
that may
partners.
have the innovation? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, for track 1 and 3, I don't think there's too many, barriers there, depending on, partnerships like that help the technology grow. And that's what we're looking for. So, I think it's up to you maybe as the proposer to determine that relationship and how that works both with the budget and with the scope of work that you're planning. But the idea is that, partnerships like that can really accelerate the growth and the commercialization of a product. So that's why they're so recommended and encouraged.
Yeah, and it's the same for track 2. The only consideration we have for track 2 is each entity in the accelerator will be represented by 1 person. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to move around a very big bus full of people. But partnerships are encouraged.
Thank you both. That is the last question that we have for today for the webinar. And the webinar recording is going to be available for your reference on the FFAR website after today's webinar. So for those of you who want to listen to it or go through it again, clarify issues, we will refer you to the FFAR website for the recording. I now want to call upon Vonnie for the closing remarks. I want to thank you so much for attending today's session. Vonnie?
I'm here. Let me get all my screens and everything on. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us to the very end. That was a huge amount of information, and everyone did a great job asking and answering questions. So thank you for hanging in with us. And as we wrap up today's webinar, I want to take a moment to thank you all for being part of this important conversation. The engagement and insights that everybody had made the session a true success. First, I want to express my deepest gratitude to USDA. Your leadership in advancing sustainable solutions for specialty crop exports is visionary. The creation of the ASCE Sustainable Packaging Innovation Lab is a great example of your commitment to keeping U.S. specialty crops competitive in a challenging and changing global market. The Foundation of Food and Agriculture Research, thank you for your incredible partnership. The work you're supporting across this program's 3 tracks, applied R&D, technology acceleration, and scale-up and pilots, is driving innovation and helping turn groundbreaking ideas into real-world solutions. And to Clemson University, the collaboration has been vital to this initiative's success. Your work in developing pilot-ready solutions is bridging the gap between innovation and implementation. At the Foundation of Fresh Produce, we will work to scale innovations and get them on the road to commercialization. What makes this program truly unique is the way that it brings together people from all sectors: government, nonprofits, academia, and industry. Together, we're addressing the pressing challenge of creating sustainable packaging solutions. This isn't just about meeting regulations, it's about rethinking the future of U.S. specialty crops and their place in the global market. So why is this so important? I think we've heard in the beginning from Anna a lot of the work that USDA has done in really looking at how the global rules around packaging are changing fast, and these changes are reshaping trade. Anna talked about the EU ban on non-recyclable packaging and reducing and recycling, and the new rules on reducing and recycling materials. Canada's changing their rules, and countries like the UK and Chile and India are all introducing frameworks that make producers more responsible for packaging waste. These regulations are game-changing. A USDA report, which Anna talked about too, in 2022 found that many US exporters aren't ready to meet these requirements yet, which could make it harder to access key markets and hurt the competitiveness of our specialty crops. These challenges are also incredible opportunities. By embracing sustainable packaging, we can reduce food waste, comply with new standards, unlock new markets, and improve environmental outcomes, all while building trust with our consumer base. Through the lab, we will be developing cutting-edge solutions. These are more than technical innovations. They're key to maintaining and expanding the $7 billion worth of U.S. specialty crops we export each year. Together, we're ensuring that sustainability and competitiveness go hand in hand. And thank you, finally, thank you for all of you being here today and sticking to the end. There's a lot of information, but your time, your ideas, and your commitment to this mission are what make progress possible. Whether you're a researcher, a grower, a policymaker, or an inventor, your role is vital in shaping the future of agriculture. So thank you to all of you for being part of this exciting journey, and I look forward to the critical work ahead and the success that we will achieve together through this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Vonnie. And to all, have a wonderful rest of your day.